Remember this in 2012, President on the lawn announcing his own amnesty plan? Got a little contentious with Neil Monroe from the Daily Caller. Remember that? Oh, we have it. Roll it.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization. Now, let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving a degree of relief and hope to talented, driven, patriotic young people. It is the right thing to do. Excuse me, sir. It's not time for questions, sir. Not while I'm speaking. Precisely because this is temporary, Congress needs to act. And I've seen the stories of Americans and schools and churches and communities across the country who stood up for them and rallied behind them and pushed us to give them a better path and freedom from fear, because we are a better nation than one that expels innocent young kids. And the answer to your question, sir, and the next time I prefer you let me finish my statements before you ask that question, is this is the right thing to do for the American people. Baby, I didn't ask for an argument. I'm answering your question. It is the right thing to do for the American people, and here's why. Here's the reason. Because these young people are going to make extraordinary contributions and are already making contributions to our society.
The DREAM Act of 2012, after he said he could not do it, it was up to Congress. Hey, Article 2, powers in the executive don't allow him to make law. That's Article 1. He went through that. Yet there he was making policy affecting 800,000 illegal aliens. And right now we are joined with the man who can clear this all up and explain it to us. Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. If you are interested in understanding immigration, illegal immigration, all of the immigration debates that are currently taking place, Center for Immigration Studies. Mark Krikorian, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Tell me, is that the reason we see so many kids at the border, that executive order?
Well, it's part of it. I mean, in other words, that illegal amnesty that Obama implemented, even though Congress turned it down, is part of a larger pattern. I mean, this administration has been downgrading immigration enforcement from, as soon as they took office. And then there's this, as you said, this DREAM Act amnesty. Also, the administration has been just letting go families of illegal aliens. In other words, families with kids. If they come across the border, they just give them a summons, say, please show up to immigration court on such and such a date, and just let them go as though they're going to come back. And kids minors who come without adults, and the minors, most of them are 16, 17 years old. So, they might even have jobs back home. They're not 5-year-olds running across the desert. But what they do with them is they hold on to them until they find the family members or the ostensible family members in the United States, and then deliver them to those family members free of charge, even if they're illegal aliens. So all of those things put together have created this deluge of people from Central America pouring into Texas.
And all of those surround not enforcing our laws.
Right, exactly. That's kind of the point. Is that this administration, I don't think, expected this to happen, but that's because they don't really know what they're doing. But it's clearly their doing, their fault, their policies. It's no question, things are lousy in Central America. I mean, it's poor. There's disorder. There's no question about that. But why are they coming? What makes them think they would likely succeed in coming? And that is the news they're getting from, people here, from relatives and friends here, from radio and newspaper down in their home countries, telling them if they come here, if they're either kids on their own or if they're families with kids, the Border Patrol will simply let them go. They'll have a paper. Supposedly they'll be in deportation proceedings on some list somewhere, but there's no chance that the government's going to go find them and make them leave the country. It's just everybody knows that. And so the administration knows this is a political problem for them because this is, a big deal, and it's becoming damaging politically. So what they're doing is the president is sending Joe Biden next week down to Central America to try to twist the arms of the governments there to keep people from leaving the country. That's not going to work. Those countries have no inclination or incentive or ability to do that. But that's the easy way out for this administration because that means they wouldn't have to change any of their own immigration policies. They just want to try to get the sending countries to stop people from leaving in the first place.
Do you see him taking any more executive action and waiving enforcement before November?
I don't think so. He's already put off, well, let me put it this way. In response to pressure from the advocacy groups, the open borders groups, he ordered a review of deportation policies to make them more humane, which is was just a political stunt. And he's now delayed the announcement of what changes he might make till at least August. I don't see him doing anything before the election, ultimately. He's going to put it off again because if he announces more of these unilateral executive actions, letting illegal immigrants stay, there's a real potential it could guarantee loss of the Senate because it's the kind of thing that's going to, it's going to work. It's going to anger people in Arkansas, in Louisiana, in Montana, North Carolina. So I think he's going to put off doing anything until after the election. And then if the Democrats lose the Senate, I could see him figuring that he's got nothing to lose. And then you might see some more sweeping executive action.
Walk me through the identity politics calculation that's being made here. And overall, is it the belief that if you don't support immigration reform, a road to citizenship, a path to citizenship, aka Amnesty, that costs you Hispanic votes? And is that what it means? Because I get the idea they're law-abiding Americans first without the hyphens, and they're sitting there regardless if they're Hispanic, white, whatever. And they're like, hey, look, they're breaking the law. I'm for the rule of law. This is not working out. Where am I on this, Mark? Am I in, the land that I want to see as opposed to the land that is?
Well, there's no question there's a lot of Hispanic voters who would, in fact, take that approach. I mean, what the Democrats want to do is turn this into exclusively a tribal issue. In other words, that immigration policy, the whole point of immigration policy is to get as many people who look like you into the country. Pure kind of tribal politics. The thing is, it doesn't seem like actual ordinary Hispanic Americans who, like anybody else, have a whole variety of different interests and goals and things, actually respond to that much. There was just a recent survey, actually, that showed immigration was like 5th out of 5 in importance of policy concerns for voters. I mean, look, Hispanic Americans are just like any other kind of American in the sense that They're worried about education. They're worried about jobs, the economy, all that kind of stuff. Now, they'll have different political views. Some are conservative, some are liberal. They're much more likely to be big government liberals than the average. And immigration is no doubt more important to them because they're more likely to either be immigrants or have close relatives who are immigrants. But it doesn't swamp everything else. It's not the issue. And too many Republicans think that just making noise about amnesty is a shortcut to actually the work necessary to persuade Hispanic voters to vote Republican. So it's going to be hard work. It's probably not going to succeed as much as they would like, but you might get somewhere. But this pandering is not going to get Republicans anywhere if that's their Latino outreach strategy.
And again, I know we're going into the politics and the cartoonish world of it, and especially in identity politics, as you've just detailed. But is there an approach that says, look, I am not going to address you as anything but an American because that's how I look at you? And having that approach, I recognize there's this idea of we're going to reach out to certain communities. And to me, that's one of the reasons I just don't like politics, because I just think it undermines what you're trying. If you're trying to forward that we're Americans under law, no hyphens, and that's how we're going to assimilate. We're going to have very different points of view, liberal, conservative, whatever it is. But if you start continuing with this identity of ethnicity and race, and shaping your agenda around it, even the communication agenda around it, don't you undermine your foundation overall?
Yeah, no, I agree. There's no question about it. Now, there's 2 points I'd make, though. One is you do want to talk to people where they are and in ways that they're going to be receptive to. So, I mean, I'm not adverse under any circumstances to, a politician going to whatever, the, Puerto Rican Day parade and shaking hands and kissing babies. That's just a normal, healthy thing, a part of civil society. People, the Knights of Columbus and the Hibernian American Association, all that stuff, that's kind of normal, healthy stuff. I'm not worried about that as long as it's not part of a political agenda.
Yeah, it's not special favors.
The other point I'd make is that that's not even going to work if you're a Republican unless you've got a policy agenda that's going to appeal to people. And that's a problem Republicans have had for anybody of any ethnic group, is that they've, talked. You can only talk about tax cuts and entrepreneurship so much before people tune you out. And that's something that reform conservatives are trying to put together as an agenda that appeals to middle class and blue collar people of any ethnic group. And limits on immigration is part of that reform agenda. And it should be sold even to Hispanic voters in a forthright, honest way. And I think you're going to get more respect. Republicans will get more respect from Hispanic voters that way.
David Brats' victory, final question for you. How much of percentage-wise, if you were looking at his victory over Eric Cantor, did immigration have to do with the talk of amnesty coming out of Cantor?
Quite a bit of it, but a lot of it. There's no question about it. But I'm not sure how you can separate out the rest of his campaign, because his campaign was about, fighting back against corporate cronyism, the Wall Street influence at the expense of Main Street. And immigration is part of corporate cronyism. In other words, the Senate immigration bill from last year was a, crony capitalist bill. And so my point is immigration is part of this whole thing. I don't think you can separate it out. One factoid that I thought was fantastic. Eric Cantor's biggest group of donors, biggest source of donors, was a hedge fund on Park Avenue in Manhattan. David Brat's biggest source of individual donors was a body shop in Richmond, Virginia. A body shop versus a hedge fund. That really sums up the whole fight, and immigration is part of that fight.
Amen. Mark Krikorian, he is the Executive Director for the Center for Immigration Studies, and he's working late tonight, and we appreciate him making time for us. Mark, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Bye.
take care. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. On the flip side, a little primer on how we got to where we are in Iraq, and then a man who is advising the European Parliament as we speak. Yeah. He's the expert's expert, Dr. Waleed Fairs. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.